All right, I think Nathan's mute now, so I'll open us up in prayer. Father God, we're just thankful for this evening. Lord, we're thankful for the technology that you've given us and given us the ability to have a meeting from many different locations. So thank you for that, Lord. Thank you for this school system. God, help us to shepherd it well. Lord, there's a lot of very difficult decisions to be made, and I certainly will just say first and foremost that I don't have the answers. I don't think any of us do. But Lord, we're leaning on you to help guide and direct us. And we just pray that you would be very present in this meeting and help us to do that. We pray for protection for our kids, our staff, our community, Lord, as we begin the process of getting back into these school buildings and proceeding with life. So God, again, just invite you in here this evening to be with us. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can everybody see my screen? Everybody's good. Okay. All right, public participation. We do not have public participation tonight. I see Dr. Sargent is joining us, so he should be here momentarily. So we will move into approval of agenda. Nathan, if you'd like to go ahead and ask for a motion.
I make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Thank you. Everybody's in favor? Okay, very good. All right, moving on down. Under business items, we have the first item. Now, since this is the first look at the FY21 budget, this will be tabled for 1 month. So we'll have 2 public meetings on the budget. Tonight, we're just looking at the draft budget. So you can take a look at it. We can go over it and you can ask questions. And it's a lot to digest. And so after you look at the budget, if you have questions, please feel free, stop me, and we will do what needs to be done to clarify. I was thinking Dr. Sargent was on.
I think I am.
Okay, good.
Finally,
okay.
Yep.
So we're just waiting on Miss Pittman, but Toby is working with her to get her on. So we will go ahead and can everyone see the screen where I have the budget? Okay, then we're just going to go through. I want to start with going through the revenues that we'll have in FY21, and then we'll go through the estimated expenditures for FY21. So the first line, we have our local taxes, and that's a projection at 3.4 million. Because remember, we haven't set our millage rate. That's something that will be done later in August. And so we go ahead and we project what we will need to make this budget happen. So that is only an estimate, 3.4 million. That's given the current millage rate. Given the current millage rate, we would take in 3.4 million in local taxes. Now, what you see out here under debt service, that's what we should receive from the bond millage. Because remember, we have the M&O millage, and then we have the 3 mil bond millage. So this is going to come from M&O, the 3.4, and you're going to have 575,000 coming for bond millage. The bond millage can only pay off the outstanding bond debt. That's the only thing that money can be used for. Once the outstanding bond debt is gone, you can no longer have a bond millage if you do not have outstanding bond debt. So other local taxes, we'll still get our TAF tax. That is only an estimate of 300,000 because that's a guess. You don't know what people are going to do as far as with the economy. So that's about where we were this year, and that's where that number comes from. QBE this year, you know, we will have an austerity cut this year, which is different than last year. But the bottom line QBE number that we have been given is a 10% cut. So that puts QBE coming in at $11,468,924. ELOST, that is only an estimate, but that estimate is a whole lot better than what I ever predicted it would be for FY21. So we are hopeful that in ELOST funds, we will receive at least $1,355,969.95. And that is just from our monthly ELOST amount that we receive from the state. State charter funds this year, the next few things that we're going to talk about have to do with this QBE amount. Within that QBE amount, we're getting in state charter funds $174,055. That's not in addition to. That amount is included in that bottom line QBE amount. Local fair share. This is what 5 meals of local fair share would be worth for Commerce City. So this is not money that the state sends us and then we send back. Remember, the local fair share, they just keep that and we don't receive that. So that's our portion that's given to the state. Midterm state adjustment, you see nothing there because that's something that we pretty much cannot predict at this point in time because we don't know how much enrollment growth that we will have during the year. The only way that you get an increase in the midterm is if you have a change in the number of students that you have in your system. So if we had this influx of children that would be reported in October for the October FTE count, then our system would receive a midterm adjustment. If that doesn't happen, then we won't get a midterm adjustment. Now, what we have been told, the unknown is we don't know what's going to happen with state revenue given a second peak of the coronavirus. So if something unforeseen happened, that is an area where the state could come back at midterm, and rather than adding to the amount that we're receiving here in QBE funds, they could say we're going to withhold an amount. Midterm adjustment basically depends on two things: the amount of enrollment increase school systems have and what the state budget figures look like. The next item is austerity cut. If you'll remember, last year we didn't have an austerity cut. And so this year, ours is 10%. And so basically what that means is the state will not send $1,077,155. So that's the part that we have to make up the difference. Equalization grant, the good news here is that our system will continue to receive equalization grant money. Originally, when they were first talking about cuts, not only were they talking about cutting QBE, but they had also talked about cutting the equalization grant fund. But fortunately, Governor Kemp had said that will not happen. And so the equalization grant money stays in place. And so we're still receiving that. The nursing amount is still $45,000. Transportation, our system will receive $84,539. So all of these amounts are included on the allotment sheet that totals this $11,468,924. School food service, because the numbers aren't in for Rich Friedman's budget, I just plugged in what we used last year, which was $1,020,000 there for school food services. And then the other payments would be the on behalf payments that we receive from the state, our Medicaid payments and interest payments. If you take what those numbers were this year, then we should receive somewhere around $111,500. Federal programs, we will receive additional under special revenue. We will receive additional federal programs, titles, the title programs, Title I, Title II, Title III, and that amount should be about $800,000, but that is not sent to us until later in the fiscal year. Also under federal programs, the CARES Act funding, that's federal money that we received this year because they knew that there would be a budget shortfall with the state. And so our amount that we're receiving this year is $295,211. So the total estimated revenue we should receive this year is $15,575,635. Questions about revenue? Are we ready to talk about estimated expenditures? Okay. Under estimated expenditures, what I've done is just put kind of a cheat sheet out to the right so you all can see what's in those figures. So if you look at instruction obviously is the largest expenditure at $10,809,198.22. And so basically what happens, that amount, we take that amount, well, all the amounts on here, and we divide them by a school calendar year so that we know each month what's going out and what we should receive as reimbursement from the state. So within that instructional amount, that's the amount for salaries for teachers, paraprofessionals, instructional materials like software, textbooks, etc. So basically the bulk of the expenses for instruction are all charged to that amount. Pupil services, $737,734.55. That includes athletic supplements, school nurses, the psychologist, parent involvement coordinator, and speech language pathologist. Those positions plus the additional expenditures that go along with those expenditures. Improvement of instruction, $306,452.81. And you can see that is where we pay our technology specialists, any travel for them, information services, supplies, and computer equipment. Instructional staff training, $42,000, and that is professional learning. That's for consultants, for travel, and for registration for dues and fees. Educational media is $375,831.12, and that will be media specialist salaries, media paraprofessionals, software used in the media center, books, budget for books, dues and fees, and equipment. General administration is $377,184.58. So that includes board members, superintendent, workman's comp, liability insurance, software, and purchase services. School administration, 1,225,451.28. That includes principals, assistant principals, clerical staff, books, professional development, and computer equipment. Business services, 186,834.40. That includes clerical, finance director, software, travel, dues and fees, purchase professional services. Maintenance and operations, 1,380,532.07. That includes lawn services, Service Fort, Century Pest, Windstream, liability auto insurance, ABM, and waste management. Those are our big expenditures in that particular category. Student transportation is 427,980.62, and that includes bus drivers, repair and maintenance, and fuel. Central support, 10,500 for Infinite Campus. That's our student information system. Other support, 12,362. That's Unum Disability 403B match that we do. Let's see. School nutrition's 21,000. That's clerical along with the benefits. And other is 25,000, and that's a transfer that we do for pre-K charges. This is the amount that basically cancels out Rich's number that he has for school food service. This amount of $397,028, that is the ABM lease. $57,928 is the bus lease. So all of that, those two things will come out of those ELOST amounts. And then our debt service, what we do when we have to do a debt service payment, we'll do a debt service payment in this time of the year in July, because we have a principal and interest payment due every single August. And then we have an interest payment due every February. So what we do is we use the bond millage first, because the only thing that money can be spent on is outstanding bond debt. So once that's zeroed out, then that's when we start using ELOS funds. So the total, when you total this column, total expenses, 15,938,061.64. That amount includes 5 less days on an amended calendar for employees. So by doing that, that saved $300,000. That amount would have been $300,000 more if we would have had all 10 days in there for employees. But by removing 5 days, then we saved $300,000. Because you can pretty much guess a furlough day in commerce saves the system about $60,000. So originally, when we had 10 days in there, we were looking to save about $600,000. And so then when we saw the cut is going to be dropped from 14% to what they said 11%, then to 10%, then what my recommendation would be is to cut the days from 10 days on an amended calendar to 5 days on an amended calendar. And so what we would do is give all the employee days back that we had marked as iffy second semester, the day in January, the day in March. No, I'm sorry, the day in February, the day in March, and the 2 post-planning days, and give those days back. When you subtract our expenses from our revenue coming in, you see it's a negative figure. So what that means is we're going into the fund balance $362,426. We are going into fund balance, but we're not going as much into fund balance as we originally thought we would. Originally, we were thinking that number would be somewhere around $500,000. So you want to know, what is the fund balance? So FY20 fund balance, that the year we just finished. Now it's not completely closed out because you know that won't happen until later in the year. So that fund balance should be, this is an estimate, but we should end the year with $3.1 million in the fund balance. Okay, so what this means is you've got $3.1 million sitting in a fund balance, but you're going into that fund balance that amount of money. So you see FY21 fund balance at the end of FY21, we start the year there with this budget. We're going to end the year, we should end the year with $2.7 million in the fund balance at the end of FY21. Everybody with me so far? Okay, so the other piece that we've got to have in the back of our mind that we've been talking about for a while, SK Battery, as you know, chose to do a pilot payment. And so a pilot payment is a payment in lieu of taxes. And so basically what that means is that their worth does not go on the tax digest because they have chosen, rather than the county levying taxes on them, they said, we just want to make a pilot payment, because typically that means taxes are abated when they do that. So what they've done is, in that payment, SK Battery gave a payment to the school system in May of 2020 for $259,160. In May of 2021, SK Battery's pilot payment to our school system will be $1,154,775 for a total of $1,413,935. So if you'll notice, both of these fund balance numbers say without SK payments, because what we've talked to the auditors about, when SK chose to do a pilot, then what the State Department of Revenue said, we do not care what they did at the local level, because we still calculate the earnings of the school system based upon what the total tax digest is in Commerce City. So what happens here is, when SK Battery goes completely on the books, what that's going to do is it's going to inflate the tax digest for the city, for Commerce. And then when the Department of Revenue ranks the systems from richest to poorest, then they're going to say, wow, Commerce City, your digest really improved. And so because of where we're going to fall in that ranking, we know, because we've done the calculation, that our system will probably no longer receive equalization grant money. So that's going to cause the system at that point to lose $1.8 million. The other thing that's going to happen is your local fair share is the value of what 5 meals would be in Commerce. So that's based on the current digest. If you triple that, because that's basically what's projected to happen to our digest, then triple that number is what will be withheld in local fair share. So if you'll remember, when we discussed this sometime back in February, Our decision at that time was, okay, that's fine. That's what's going to happen, and we're going to make it work. But the way we're going to make it work is we're going to take this pilot payment from SK Battery, and we're not going to say, oh, wow, look, we've got an additional $1.4 million in the budget. So we're not worried about what's happening here, because what's going to happen, as we know on that projection sheet, starting about school year FY25, we're going to see that state funds, we're going to need this amount to overcome not getting equalization grant money and what's going to happen to local fair share. Everybody with me? Now, the other piece that we have to keep in mind is that when we decided that, if you'll remember, this was called Project Hercules back in the beginning. And so that was phase 1 of SK Battery. And then they started talking about Project Zeus. And Project Zeus is phase 2 of SK Battery. And so we had a call today, in fact, to discuss this. And it's not completely finalized that the phase 2 numbers and what that looks like for Commerce City. But it could be, if phase 2 is approved and everything happens as it should, then the payments that we receive with phase 1 plus phase 2 from Project Zeus should help us overcome any loss that we experience by an increase in local fair share and a decrease in equalization grant funding. Does that make sense? So right now, that's the budget as it is. Please, I know that's a lot of information. And so, I'm sorry, somebody said something, but I can't hear what was said. Did somebody say something?
Yeah.
Okay. What was the question?
So you said about 300,000 for 5 furlough days, correct?
That is correct.
So that would put us negative 662,000 basically if we didn't do any furloughs for the teachers.
You are correct.
And there's no estimations to where you think we would be okay if we went in the hole that far this fiscal year.
Well, I mean, by doing that, here's the unknown. And I see where you're going with this. Here's the unknown. We don't know what's going to happen between now and the end of the year. And so we don't know if there's going to be an additional hit that could happen to us at midterm, where the state says, wow, we had another spike, and so we're going to have to do an additional cut. And the reason I say that is because when we went through the last recession, that's exactly what happened to us. We thought we had seen the worst at the beginning of the year, and then, in fact, we had not. So my preference, if you're just asking what I would recommend, what I would like to see happen is we go with this budget. And then at the end of this year, if we see, okay, the state did not have to cut additional money. And we're in a position based on what happens with phase 2 of SK Battery, that not only in FY22 could we have a full instructional calendar, but at that point, my recommendation would be, if we're financially in a place to make it happen, by being conservative this year, we have a full calendar in FY22, and we look at increasing local supplements in FY22. Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Because, as we have talked, our local supplement currently is nowhere close to surrounding systems. And in order to be competitive, to recruit people to come to our system, we have got to focus on increasing that local supplement.
I'll agree 100%.
So, Ms. Turbot, when we're gonna discuss K us in Jackson County?
When will we know about phase 2?
Now, the discussion about Jackson County with the.
Oh, okay. Okay, the other thing that Nathan's talking about is the shared tax agreement. And right now, the way it is, of course, because SK Battery is in the shared tax district and we have a shared tax agreement, though the shared tax agreement has not been acknowledged in 12 years. Nathan's question is, are we as a system in a position where we can project and say, okay, well, we're just going to assume SK Battery is located in Commerce, so the payment should just go to Commerce. And Nathan, you're right in that we cannot 100% assume that, because there is an agreement in place. However, I think we're in a position, because it hasn't been recognized in over a decade, we're in a position where we could say, why are we going to start recognizing the agreement now when it hasn't been on the table in 12 years? So basically where we are right now, I have explained to Corey that our school board is not interested in, because we had talked about in a meeting with Commerce, Jefferson, and Jackson County, we had talked about revising the shared tax agreement. And after our discussion, I have told Corey that Commerce School Board is not interested in a revision of the shared tax agreement. And so as far as where we are with that right now, Nathan, just to be honest with you, if I had to guess, I doubt Harbin and Hartley have done much work on that at all, because they have been so focused and time consumed with COVID and getting schools reopened and answering questions from school systems across the state. I don't think that has been addressed. Other questions about the budget? It is a tight budget, but in working with the principals, they know that this is going to be an extremely tight budget year. And we just know that that's what we have to work with, and we'll make it happen.
One more question, Ms. Turbot. Is this budget based on the sports that we're going to have the coming year?
It is. That includes all expenses that I'm aware of so far.
We're going to have a full schedule, the coaches think, or we're going to have a less schedule?
That's kind of the question of the day. And fortunately, we have our all-knowing athletic director right here on this Zoom call. And so we were just talking about that, Nathan, today in the principals meeting. And I think there's a lot of speculation about what could possibly happen. But Mr. Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think we've received any final word from the Georgia High School Association.
No, I had a meeting scheduled tomorrow with all my coaches, hoping to be able to give them some information, and I canceled that earlier today because I really don't have any. GHSA has not given us any information. It definitely looks like it's going the opposite way rather than having a normal year. The National Junior College this morning, they went ahead and pushed off their whole football country nationwide. They pushed their football to the spring. And a lot of different school districts are voting right now, or school states are looking to push the fall sports back to the spring. But as of today, July 13th at 6:30, Georgia is slated to begin practice on the 27th, and competition's on time. We have not been told otherwise.
Good. Thank you.
Is that with an audience, or is it they're just going to be playing?
We have not heard one word from anybody about that. We have no idea.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm late coming on, Mr. Smith.
No,
I
that's
can't get
fine.
my computer to go to the meeting, so I'm on the phone.
We have not
So
heard.
you don't know, you're just going to go ahead with it and let people come and.
I'm sure we will hear something by then. These states are meeting every day. I mean, GHSA, they send out something every couple of days to us or to me, but they're not able to share any information yet. It's like they don't have any decisions. I think they're waiting on the colleges.
Yeah, okay.
What the SEC and the ACC does, if they follow suit with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, I think you'll start seeing Georgia tighten up a little bit. But I think the main thing will be, when do we start the fall season? Because, you know, there are certain school districts that have pushed off further in the school year, beginning of the school year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, any information I have, I will share. But like I told my coaches today, I just don't have much to share.
Now, Mr. Smith, you do have some information to share. He was telling me today that I have applied through their portal on GHSA for you all to have your passes this year. And Mr. Smith was told that they are using a new process. So we don't think that anyone will be given an actual plastic pass this year, that it's going to somehow work with your phone through something called Dragonfly. So we haven't received any additional information about that. But if you get something on your phone about an app, just might want to go ahead and download it. And it's going to be called Dragonfly through the GHSA.
Dragonfly.
You'll actually have your tickets. You'll have to create an account, but I did mine this morning. I know Dr. Powell's done his this afternoon, but that's just something we just learned about. So as it goes forward, I'll definitely keep everybody in touch. I'll make sure you get a pass, but it will be on your phone. Probably some kind of code they scan as you walk in.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. All right, going back to the budget, a couple of things I need to mention. The budget will be considered for final adoption by the Board of Education in the regular session at 6 p.m. on August the 10th. There will be 2 meetings scheduled for community input. These meetings will be held on July 27th at 10 a.m. and August 10th, just prior to the board meeting at 5:30 p.m. But like I said, because it's a lot of information, and if you look at it and you need additional detail, there is a spreadsheet that gives you complete details on all of these figures, just so you know what all is included. Any questions right now over budget?
No, thank you.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right, next item, system strategic plan. And I told the principals, I've never been so excited about reviewing the system strategic plan as I was this year, because it just takes me away from COVID-19 for just a little while, and I don't have to think about COVID-19 and reopening school. And you get to actually focus on the things that are important and why we do what we do. And so if you look through here, you will notice some changes, because now our accrediting agency is Cognia, and it's no longer Advanced Ed. And so this strategic plan, because we're accredited through Cognia, aligns to their standards. And so the standards are divided into 3 areas. Domain 1 is a focus on leadership capacity. Domain 2 focuses on learning capacity, and domain 3 focuses on resource capacity. And so these are the things, if you're ever wondering, well, I wonder if the school administrators and the folks that work at the school, I wonder if they really know, like, what is within their realm that they need to be focused on. If you ever question that, these are the things that you should focus on as a school administrator, as a school employee. This is the focus. These people accredit us, and they tell us these are the things that we're going to check for when we do an accreditation visit. And they come to us every 5 years. Now, we're scheduled to have a visit. We should have a visit in the fall of 22. But I don't know what's going to happen, because the schools they were supposed to be visiting during all of the closures, that hasn't happened. And so I've been told that they have been pushed back a year. So I don't know where that's going to put us on the timeline. So normally they have their annual conference in November, and we attend that. And so hopefully we will be getting some guidance about that. But as you look through the strategic plan, just know that the items, the action items that are listed in that plan align to Cognia, the accrediting agency.
Could you spell that, please?
COGNIA. Ms. Pittman,
Okay.
is what we used to know as SACS.
Facts.
SACS. It was the Southern Accreditation of
Yes,
Colleges
facts.
and Schools.
Yes,
SACS.
yes.
Yes,
That's why I
ma'am.
asked you to spell it. I wasn't familiar with that. What were the 3 areas?
So it's leadership capacity, learning capacity, and resource allocation.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, and then the next item, these are our purpose statements that we had worked on several years ago, just to align why we exist as a school system. And so with the input from stakeholders through surveys, we created the system, mission, system, vision, and purpose statement. And then working with the school improvement coordinators and the folks at each of the schools, we created a vision and purpose statement for each of our schools so that it builds upon each other. When you read through these vision purpose statements, you can see how it talks about if the purpose of the primary school is to prepare students for the transition to elementary. And then why does the elementary school exist? To engage students in successful learning experience that will encourage the development of independent learning in preparation for middle school. So we're trying to make them more independent as they transition between primary to middle school. And then middle school, we've got our new middle school principal on the line. So he is ready to go and fulfill this vision of engaging students in successful learning opportunities while building character and confidence during those middle school years in order to be well prepared for their high school experiences. And then high school, the purpose of Commerce High School is to graduate students who have mastered the content and to be prepared for post-secondary education and or the workforce. So really, those are still very timely. Our motto and slogan, a better community, one student at a time, and our values and belief statements have not changed. I mean, it is still very timely, but I do try to share those with the board each year just to make you aware this is a new school year, but our focus remains on these purpose statements. So any questions about strategic plan or purpose, values, belief statements?
No.
Okay. All right, that brings us to the question of the day, the hour, the century. Okay, so reopening plan for Commerce City Schools. If you'll remember the last time we talked about this, we were working through guidance from the state that identified phases based upon the spread of the virus in our community. So we had what we called a yellow plan based on minimal to moderate spread. And then we had a red plan based on substantial spread. But since that time, we have been told by the state, we are no longer aligning our guidance to the amount of spread of the virus. So they revised their guidance and they sent that to us on Friday of this past week. And it was embargoed, so we couldn't share it with anyone until after 2 p.m. today. So we have revised our guidance to reflect what the state put in their guidance. Today, this morning at 9 o'clock, I had a conference call along with all other superintendents in our state with Governor Kemp, Superintendent Richard Woods, and with Kathleen Toomey, Dr. Kathleen Toomey, who is with the Department of Public Health. So in their guidance, and I shared this with the principals after the call, they talked about a variety of things, but Governor Kemp made it very clear, and I shared with the principals that I wrote down exactly what he said in the call this morning at 9 o'clock. And his words were, get kids back in the classroom. He said, I am a firm believer in kids in the classroom, because I think we all understand that if kids are learning at the optimal level, they've got to get back to school. They need to be in the classroom with the teachers. So Superintendent Woods also reiterated the same things Governor Kemp had said, and said that they are fully in support of what local districts are doing. They understand that each community is very different and that we have to do what we think is best for our local community. So then Dr. Toomey comes on, because she is kind of the go-to person for Governor Kemp in the state in relation to this virus. And she made a lot of points as far as lessons learned. And she reiterated that she also supported what local systems were doing. Several of the questions from superintendents centered around things like masks. And we're going to talk about masks. I will tell you that according to Dr. Toomey, her words were, and I wrote that down, model mask without a mandate. And she felt like, as leaders in the schools, and the principals and I've talked about this, and as teachers in the schools, then the only way that we have at this point to minimize the spread of the virus, since we do not have a vaccine, is to wear a mask. That's the only step that we have. And so she suggested that we focus on modeling that behavior out of respect for the other people that we're going to be around. Now, she did say that it is up to the local systems. When I had a call today at 3 o'clock, a conference call with all of the school systems in our RESA. So it's basically the 13 school systems surrounding us, including Jefferson City and Jackson County. And I asked all of the superintendents, they were all present in the call, and I asked them, Are any of you requiring masks? None of them are requiring that their students wear masks. They did say that Clark County initially required students to wear masks, and they have backed off of that. Today, they announced that it's no longer a mandate. So they are strongly encouraging masks, but they are not requiring masks. The only place they have required masks will be on the school buses, because they said there's no way it's going to be feasible to socially distance students on a school bus. So we are going to require that bus drivers and students who choose to ride on the school buses wear a mask. So right now in our guidance, and we're just going to go through the guidance, and I ask the principals to please be present for this part, so that if you have specific questions related to their particular school buildings, please ask it. Because if you're thinking it, I guarantee you there are parents that are wondering the same thing. So let's just look. This is the reopening plan for our school system. This is the way it will be right now on July 13th. This is the way we think it's going to be when students return on Friday, August 7th. So you see the daily schedule, Monday through Friday, the instructional time expectations at each of the schools. You see that students will report directly to the classrooms, because we cannot have the students congregate in large areas like in the gymnasiums and in the cafeterias. So they're going to go by, pick up their lunches when they arrive to school, and then report directly to their first period class. Attendance will still be taken daily, and it will be expected and reported in Infinite Campus. Now, let me reemphasize that we are not going to give perfect attendance awards, reward 100% attendance in any way, shape, or form during this school year, because we know that the top priority for us is that students and all of our employees remain as healthy as possible. So if they need to be out because they're showing symptoms, or they need to be out because someone in their family has this virus, or they have tested positive themselves, then we want them to be out. That's fine. Stay at home. The platforms. Now we are going to do, the plan is in-person instruction. And our goal is we would like to do that for as many students as we possibly can, because in our belief, the best learning takes place when the students and the teachers are in that classroom. For the students who are our most vulnerable students, and their parents do not feel comfortable sending them back to school, what we are going to do, and we're in the process of working with a company, it's the same company that 98% of the school systems in our RESA, and probably across the state at this point, are using for their electronic platform. And it's a company called Edgenuity. And so what would happen is, let's say, for example, because this is a concern, we start school person to person, and then a student has to be absent. And let's say we're just in a regular teacher's classroom. One student has to be absent. Then another student has to be absent. And that number grows and grows. Well, what we will be able to do by having an online platform, rather than that classroom teacher being responsible for continuing teaching face-to-face and providing the online distance instruction for the kids who have to be out, then what the kids who have to be out, what they will do is log into Edgenuity, where their classroom teacher has assigned their instruction for that platform. So it is possible based on the license that we will get through Edgenuity, it is possible for a student to be an online learner for 9 weeks or a semester or even the entire school year. Questions? That's just the platform. And the reason we did that, if you'll remember, when we surveyed parents and we said, please give us feedback, let us know what you liked about what we did from March to May with the online learning and how we can improve. And the most common comment, when you read through those comments, the most common comments included, I have multiple children in multiple schools. And when teachers use multiple platforms and I'm not a trained educator, I'm wanting to pull my hair out. So it would be so much easier for me as a parent if the school system had one platform and my child knew if I have a first grader, a third grader, and a seventh grader, all of my children are using Edgenuity. And it's very clear to me how this platform works. Now, I will tell you that when we have had conversations with the sales reps, the online learning option is going to look very different than what children and parents experienced in March, April, and May. And we're going to talk about that in just a second.
Couple of questions, Dr. Talbert. I think I heard you mention this. If a student opts into the online learning, it's for a minimum of 9 weeks.
That is our goal, Kyle. And I'll be honest with you, that's something we're having to, I had a call into Corey because some of the school systems in our RESA, and I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you, some of the school systems in our RESA are requiring, if a parent chooses this online option, they're saying, you've made that choice. You sign that contract, you're locked in for the entire semester. And I understand the rationale for doing that. But my question for Corey is, let's say, Kyle, you say, you know what, Joy, I want Cooper to do online learning. So you sign him up and you guys start this. And Cooper says, Dad, this is pretty tough. This is pretty tough. And my preference is to go back to school. And maybe you or your wife, it's quite a commitment time-wise on the part of the parent too, because the parent is considered the learning coach in Edgenuity. So maybe one of you say, wow, this is a lot more time than what I realized. And we're both working full-time jobs. I don't know that we can commit to doing this for a whole semester. So my question to the superintendents and to Corey would be, if you come to us and you say, you know, I don't necessarily know that I want my child doing this for the semester. We tried it, but we're just going to go ahead and we would prefer to have our child do face-to-face. We are your school system. So my thinking is, we're going to educate your child. We're offering the option of face-to-face instruction. And I just don't know that that's something we can hold a contract for a semester if a parent changes his or her mind, or the child changes his or her mind and said, you know, Mama, Daddy, I would much rather be in school face-to-face. This is not what I thought it was going to be. And, you know, the goal is, because with the way the software is set up, yes, it would be better to have that continuity of the software for a full grading period or a semester. I just don't know how feasible that is.
Sure, and I think a bigger concern would be someone kind of abusing that system and doing online when it's convenient and coming into the classroom when it's convenient.
And that's what we
I think
talked
that could
about with.
just
Mhm.
disrupt the classroom in general.
You're so right. And that's part of the reason why you would want them to make that long-term commitment. And that's what we talked about with the principals today. What we cannot have is for Cooper to try it in August. And then he says, I think I want to come back to school. So he comes back in September. And then long about October, I think I want to go back online. You know, we can't have the back and forth, you know. So I do understand that we need to commit to something. I just want to make sure that we can say we're going to do what we say we're going to do.
Sure.
Okay, other questions before we move on?
Yes, I want to talk a little bit about masks.
Yes, sir.
Y'all got that letter from Dr. Hill this morning. The medical people, and you'll not go to one of our offices without wearing a mask, or a hospital without wearing a mask, because we know the safest thing that we could possibly do is for everybody to wear a mask. And I still would like to see us have it happen that way, just like we do in the hospitals and the doctor's places. It's the best thing we can do. We know that's the best thing we can do to protect our children from this. I talked to my son Daniel. He works in Gwinnett County, and they're going to require them. He said down there, if you didn't want to wear one, you could just do the online thing. But that way, everybody that goes is protected the best we can. So anyway, that's what I think we ought to do. I'll not make a motion or anything, but just whatever y'all want to do with it.
Nathan,
Go ahead, Ms. Feldman.
I have a question. All right. Dr. Talbert, how much is this program going to cost?
Well, right now, what we're doing, the high school already has Edgenuity. And so the program for the high school is about $5,000. And for us to add the, I had those numbers because we just discussed it. For us to add the middle school and primary school and elementary school, it's probably going to be somewhere in the ballpark of about $19,000 additional dollars.
Yikes.
So it is quite expensive, but the thing that this does for us, Ms. Pittman, if you can imagine when you were a classroom teacher, and if you were teaching your classroom and you're responsible for teaching the classroom, then you also have children in your classroom who have chosen to do online instruction for a grading period or the entire year possibly.
Right.
And in addition to that, you have children who thought they were going to try to do face-to-face instruction, but they periodically have to be out because of various reasons, the sickness, and they may have to be out for 10 days or 14 days. And this is happening very randomly. Then we just felt like that would be a lot to ask of the classroom teacher, in addition to them planning their face-to-face instruction. So what we would do is we would have that expense this year, but hopefully by the end of this school year, we have a vaccine in place and we're not having to have this extra expense the following year.
And another question I had about that is I thought I understood you to say that the teacher is teaching face-to-face, but she also has a plan that she's going to give to Ingenuity.
Yes, ma'am. Edgenuity.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am. Uh-huh.
Well, then what's the difference?
What she will do is the curriculum is already in Edgenuity online by standard. And so what the teacher will do is the teacher will identify specific standards that she or
Okay.
he would like Edgenuity to build for that particular student when they log in. So let's say if Kyle's in my class and Kyle gets sick, and I know Kyle, I've talked to his parents and he's going to be out all week or maybe 2 weeks. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Edgenuity and I'm going to tell it for Kyle's individualized plan, I'm going to turn on particular standards that I want Kyle to receive as far as his instruction during that 10-day period.
Okay.
So it's still a lift, but
has-
it's a much lighter lift on a classroom teacher than having to provide multiple plans for multiple students.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I didn't realize that they would online would do a plan for each child. I mean, I was understanding that while we were out in March, April, and May, that they were doing, like they would do a whole classroom, and then the online students all of them would get the same thing. I mean, it wasn't an individualized program. Am I wrong?
No, ma'am, that's true. The problem with what happened in March and April and May, we did well with that considering the circumstances. But I think any student and teacher will tell you that the rigor of instruction and the level of expectations, there was no comparison to what kids were expected to do online and what kids get face to face. And the level of rigor that they will see with Edgenuity is probably quite comparable to what they would be getting in face-to-face instruction.
Okay. And
The
I want
other
to say one
thing-
and then I'll hush. I want to agree with Dr. Sargent. I mean, I firmly believe that the only reason we have such an upswing in all the cases throughout the United States is because people decided, okay, we don't need to wear these things. You know, we're good. It's going away. And they stopped wearing them, and the social distancing went away. And I believe that we need those masks. I agree with them. My 5-year-old and my 7-year-old grandson have been inundated with the reason that you wear the mask. And now they can tell you, and they wear the mask. When they go anywhere, they wear the mask. I'm done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. I appreciate that. Just because the other 13 are wrong doesn't mean we have to be.
Well, what we had said is that we would strongly encourage the mask, but the mask would not be absolutely mandated. The example we had is if you have a situation with a bus driver and the bus driver goes to pick up the students that are standing there waiting on the bus, and there's 5 kids at the stop and 4 of them have on masks to get on the bus. Are we going to, and the answer is no, obviously, but are we going to ask that bus driver to not transport that student who's not wearing a mask? We're not going to do that. So the child's going to continue to ride on the bus to school, and the discipline for that child will be like we do for any other bus discipline. You know, after the first time, it's going to be a warning. If it's a little bitty one, Kara and I have talked, and it may be a couple of warnings, but after they continually do not wear the mask, then they lose the privilege of riding the bus.
Okay. Of course,
But
you
now,
could have a few disposable ones on the bus too for them,
definitely.
for temporary use.
And what
But
we
that
said,
leaves all the kids whose parents want them safe and they want to be safe at school exposed to people who just don't want to wear a mask. It puts their health and life at risk.
Right.
And that's what we're doing by not requiring masks. Just.
So I'd love to get Kara's feedback on what a mask wearing would look like in her schools.
Kara, are you with us?
I'm right here. I just had
I
to.
understand, Kyle or
Which
Knox,
Kyle?
whichever is talking. I can't understand them. They need to talk slowly.
I think that it will look different. We're looking at a pre-K student wearing a mask for
For 8
6
hours.
to 8 hours. Yes. And do they wear them at nap time? You know, do they wear them on the playground when they're playing? I do wonder about some of our kids with severe asthma because when they come in from the playground, some of them get overheated and they wind up in the nurse's office getting a breathing treatment. And so I worry about if we mandate something that it would be difficult to, you know, I'm not a medical expert. I really don't know. I'm just thinking of students or people with health conditions where a mask might be difficult for them. I think that, I don't know, I've seen some pretty good memes of kindergarten students, you know, wearing masks on Facebook. But I think that I love the idea of us being really good role models and modeling it. I think GMA has offered to give us clear masks at the elementary and primary levels, which I think for phonics instruction is really important that, you know, we see how, you know, you form sounds, and it's important for us to be able to see how the children make those sounds. I also looked at face shields possibly for the teachers so that the kids can see them. You know, I have mixed feelings about little ones just because we learn a lot through body language and expression, and they're not going to get to see that necessarily without a clear kind of mask or shield. So I am for keeping our kids safe. I mean, I want to be back in school 100%. I want to see our kids in the halls. I want to see them, well, they won't be in the halls. I want to see them in the classrooms. And so, you know, I'm more than willing to do whatever it takes to keep the kids safe. I don't think that we're ever going to make everybody happy. I think there are parents who want kids to wear masks, and I think there are those who do not want them to wear masks. So I think we'll have to just make decisions on what's best. So I don't know if I answered your question very well. I think it'll be a challenge, but I do think it's something we could overcome.
Well, I certainly what y'all heard this morning of leading by example, and certainly strongly encouraging masks to be worn at all levels, but also understanding that I mean, you think about the discipline that you were just talking about just in the bus scenario across, you know, 1,500 students. Detention would be very full for non-mask wearing. It would be very full. And I just don't think it's realistic to add that to the plate when we're already talking about increasing class sizes and the additional strains that are currently going to be on our school system. Adding that on top, again, strongly encourage 100%, especially for our middle school and our high school. But a mask doesn't do a lot of good if it's been picked off of the floor 13 times that particular day. And I feel like a lot of these younger kids, that's what is going to end up happening.
I'll be interested to see how students respond, but I do think they'll take their cues from the adults.
Yes.
And so I'm really hopeful that parents will be as happy as we are that schools are reopening and be supportive, regardless of how they feel about the mask, that they'll support us in what we're trying to do to keep the kids healthy.
One of the things that we talked about today that you probably have been out and about enough that you've seen that there are some appropriate masks, school appropriate masks, and there are some that are not so school appropriate. And so that's another thing that we will have to address with students. We're going to strongly encourage that they wear masks, but it must be school appropriate masks.
It's all about spirit, sports of the school, you know, the logo. And it'd be like a competition for the kids because, you know, when you have dress up during school, especially in the primary and middle school, and some in high school, kids, they love that, you know. So if you make a nice mask with color stackers on it, the kids are, I think they'll start wanting to wear their masks. It'd be like an incentive for them to wear it, you know.
Okay, any questions
Right.
about the reopening plan before I go to the online plan?
Sound good?
Dr. Thompson, I do have this question. I think I've been asked this question a number of times. And we have discussed that there are HIPAA regulations and things that we certainly have to honor. In the case that there is a child or a teacher that tests positive, what, if any, steps are going to be taken when that occurs in our schools?
And you guys probably haven't had a chance to do it, I sent you the guidance that we received from the state today, and that
I haven't had a chance
guidance,
to read that yet.
there's a decision tree in that guidance, and
Okay.
it basically tells you step by step what happens in the event that were to happen. But obviously the first thing we would do, if you have a child with symptoms, we're going to strongly encourage that they report to the school nurse. And then the school nurse, and fortunately we will have a school nurse in each of our schools. To me, if there's any positive in this, I'm very, very excited about having a school nurse in every single school. And so the school nurse is going to be our point of contact. So if you have a student who's showing symptoms, they're going to report to that school nurse. And then the only mandate that we've been given by the state from Governor Kemp and Dr. Toomey is that we have to, as a school system, have a point of contact that reports any positive COVID case, an absence related to that, to the Department of Public Health. And so no other mandates other than that. And so obviously you can imagine that's going to keep that school nurse pretty busy in every single school, being that point of contact with the Department of Public Health to let them know, okay, this is a new day, Monday, July 13th. These are the number of adults absent in our school due to COVID. These are the numbers related to students who are absent. And so the student comes to the nurse's clinic because maybe they've complained with symptoms, or someone has noticed they just look like they could be feverish based upon how their little eyes look. And so they come to the school nurse. The school nurse will put them in an isolation area and take temperature, do an assessment. And then if the school nurse determines that that child's parent needs to come and get them, then the school nurse will contact the parent. At that point, hopefully the parent, because testing is free, the parent will take the child to be tested. The glitch in the plan, as we see it in talking to principals and other superintendents today, is that test result is not immediate. It's not immediate. So just because they go today because they're not feeling well and take the test, it may be a week to 10 days before we get those results.
Yep.
So then you go back 10 days from now and try to figure out, who did I get close to, so that we can do a point of contact for that child. And you figure at the high school where those students are changing classes and they're in 4 classes, that's going to be the challenge for us, is identifying who the child has had contact with. And really, a child's going to know basically kind of who they had contact with. But in our small setting where all the children know all the children, it may be that even though Kara and I are not extremely close friends, it could be that I find myself just talking to her at lunch or in a class that day that I go home sick. So how close did I get to Kara for how long to determine whether I should contact that child's parents to let them know? We had talked about some school systems are saying, according to Dr. Toomey and Governor Kemp, school systems are not to get in the business of tracking this and the contact tree. And so our only role in this is to notify the Department of Public Health. However, because of HIPAA, you're not going to want me telling everybody in your child's classroom that your child has tested positive for the virus. And so the only thing I could tell your classroom is a child in the classroom has tested positive for the virus. So they're aware of it. But how much contact did the child have with the other children in the room? So some school systems are saying we're not going down that route, because just because a child has symptoms and they go home and we get the results 10 days later, we don't know if the child's positive. It could be that the child had a sinus infection and they weren't running a fever the next day. Or what about all the kids that are in the schools that are asymptomatic and they've been exposed, but they have no symptoms? So that's where, Kyle, we're going to lean heavily on our school nurses and the folks at the Department of Public Health to help us, because they're even saying that those are the people that will help us make a decision about, depending on the amount of outbreak in our schools, which schools need to be closed or if the entire system is closed. So that's where we will rely on our health experts. But if you look at that decision tree, that gives you the guidance that our school nurses will use as far as how much contact and how many days. When the school nurse calls you as a parent to say your child is showing symptoms, we need for them to be tested, and this is the guideline we have been given as far as long as they need to be quarantined.
Dr. Sargent may speak to this, but I have read and have also seen in a documentary that the sense of smell and the sense of taste are much more indicative of whether you do or you don't have the virus than the temperature. I don't know how they do that. I guess you have to have something in there for them to smell and give them a cookie and see if they can taste it. I don't know how they do it, but.
Yeah, I think those that lose their taste and smell are in a high risk group for having it. Just the
Is that
temperature,
right?
that's not as specific, You just have to do the best you can. It sounds like a good plan. But Joy, did you say that test was free?
Yes, sir. Well, now, when I say it's free with insurance, and I have had some people tell me that they had to pay. It surprises me that it varies so much from place to place.
Yeah, we did. We did when we got it a couple weeks. We had to pay for it, and I just wondered if you knew a place they were doing them like they said they were going to be free, but I don't think they turned out to be.
I can tell you, Brazelton Medical Center is free if you have insurance. That's the only one I'm familiar with.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Other questions about this plan before we go to the online learning plan? Okay. Now, the online learning plan is the one, this is what we will use in the event that a school has to be closed or the system has to be closed, or if you just have that child who is in that most vulnerable population and they choose to do the online learning. Now, it could be that the child himself or herself is not part of that population, but they live with an elderly grandparent who is their guardian who does not feel comfortable sending the child to school. So what this guidance does, it just gives a parent an idea that if I choose to do online learning with my child, this is what it's going to look like time-wise for me. And if I have this kind of time to commit, then this may be something that will work for our family. And so this tells you as a primary student in K2, as an elementary student in grades 3 and 4, middle school, grades 5 through 8, and high school, 9 through 12. Now, when you scroll on down, it talks about grading and support services, but this is a key part right here. And it talks about this is a full-time commitment for students and for parents. This virtual option will not look like the distance learning that took place in the spring. Please note that if you choose the virtual learning option in the fall, there will be a full workload with all the classes each day. The rigor will match that of the classroom. Work will be assigned and graded. For the online option, reliable internet is required because you're doing online learning, so you have to have reliable internet, and it has to be a strong connection because there's a lot that has to be downloaded with Edgenuity. Students will be enrolled in self-paced online classes through an online learning management system. Students will need significant assistance from an adult. This adult, being the parent or the guardian, will become their learning coach, and that's according to Edgenuity. Attendance will be taken daily. Students will be eligible for extracurricular activities. Breakfast and lunch will be available for pickup. And what they will do, if a child chooses to do online learning, then what Rich Friedman with food service talked about today is on Wednesdays, they will pick up their meals for 5 days. So they will only come once a week to pick up their meals for 5 days. And it will just be a to-go lunch and to-go breakfast like we did in March and April and May. So students will follow the calendar adopted by the Board of Education, and accommodations and modifications will be made for students according to their IEP or their 504 plans. We are requesting that parents complete an online link to apply for their student to participate in online learning in the fall. The deadline to apply is Friday, July 22nd. So what will happen if you all approve these plans, then we will complete the application to have that posted for parents, hopefully by Wednesday of this week. And then we will communicate that out to the parents. These are our plans. This is the plan as we know it going back face to face. This is the online learning plan. If you choose to do the online learning plan, you'll complete an application, and then we will get that so that we can follow up on the online learning. Questions about that plan?
Will we vote on that tonight?
Yes, sir. That's going to be covered in the consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions before we let the principals go? So tell me before the principals go, tell me what you think. Are we in agreement? Can we live if we say that we're going to model wearing masks and we're going to strongly encourage masks in the classroom? And obviously, if a teacher has an underlying health issue, that teacher can require that the students in their classroom wear the mask. And
I'm
we'll
okay with-
still
I'm okay with that
require
plan.
the mask on the buses, and the bus drivers will still wear the mask.
I'm good with that plan.
I am also.
I'm great with it.
I'm good.
Well, I appreciate the commitment, at least the school's gonna do.
And,
That's good.
and we will, and every principal has given me their word that when we're in the schools and we're wearing our mask, they'll also be wearing their mask, and they will constantly encourage the adults, the employees in the buildings to wear their masks. Okay? If we're ready to move on, we'll talk about the revised.
And just to be 100% sure,
Uh-huh.
when you say we'll model it and encourage it, that does not mean a continual ask for kids who do not have masks throughout the day.
No, you're saying, are we just going to harass the children and say, where's your mask? Where's your mask?
Correct.
What we're talking about is we will model it as the adults in the building, and then we will encourage the children to wear their mask. And sometimes with school children, when adults, being their teachers, explain the importance of wearing the mask, that's part of the education process. The kids may go home and tell mom and dad, I want a mask. I want to wear my mask at school. And so, but I agree, Kyle, it can't be just a constant harassment of the
Right.
children.
Right.
Yes.
If quite frankly, parents or the student choose not to, we're telling them that is acceptable.
You are right. All we can do is strongly encourage. Right.
Can I speak to that just for a moment?
Sure.
I mean, I think, Mr. Moore, they're going to take their masks off to eat lunch, right? All those masks are going to get set down. I mean, let's just be really real. And so I am concerned because I think that wearing masks and some of our habits, people, vilify each other, on social media and things like that. But we are going to educate the kids about the proper use of things, right? We wear masks, we don't touch our faces when we wear a mask. It helps us maybe not touch our faces, which keeps us from getting the flu, maybe catching a cold, maybe getting pink eye. There's a lot of great things that can happen if we avoid touching our faces in general. So we are definitely going to educate the kids, but it's not going to be, nobody is going to make demands that I can think of. I mean, they're kids.
It's not going to be what? Did you say?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
She said, repeat what you said again, please.
Not the whole thing, just the last thing she said.
What was the last thing you said, Karen?
I don't really remember. I just think we're going to educate the kids on best practices, right? On being healthy and being using good hygiene and things like that. But we're not going to be beating anybody over the head or shaming people.
Are the teachers required to wear masks?
Sir?
Are the teachers required to wear masks, or are they going to be going around, some of them showing the poor example? Because Daniel said in Gwinnett County, they're going to give each teacher 3 masks, and it's part of the dress code. They're required to wear them. Are we going to have teachers just going around just no mask?
What we will do is, I would say with the principals, once again, you strongly encourage that they wear masks, but I was told today in a call that it could be that teachers have underlying health issues that prohibit them from wearing masks. And so if that's the case, we cannot require them to wear the mask.
Well, I can't imagine one, but maybe there is. And if there is, we can make an exception.
Right.
But I don't know what one would be.
Mhm. And based on the concerns that we have received, and the principals are aware of these from teachers, the teacher emails concerned about starting back to school, I have not received anything that would cause me to believe that a teacher would not be willing to wear a mask, because the teachers are kind of on the other end of the spectrum,
Right, because they're
the
going to be
ones
the
that I've
leaders
heard from.
for us.
Mhm.
They're going to be setting the example. Yep.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Very good.
Mhm.
Mhm.
What we're trying to do is just find common ground where we can bring the children back safely and keep the adults and children as safe as possible. Okay, so we'll move on to item D, and item D is the revised system calendar. And with this calendar, students normally have 180 days. Students would have 175 days. Employees normally have 190 days, and employees would have 185 days. So when we open up this calendar, you will see that it looks very similar to the original calendar. The only difference that you'll find is this first week of school was supposed to happen this week. And so what we've done is we've pushed the start date to the first week in August. Now, some systems, I will tell you this because I learned that on the call today, some surrounding systems, because of the governor's executive order, they have postponed the start even later. But my thinking on that is we go ahead and start, and we get as much school as we can get, hopefully, because we've already been out since March 13th. So I don't really see things being any different the third week in August versus the first week in August. Questions about the calendar? Those dates, those are the ones that I was talking about. On this calendar, if you all approve it, what we've done is we've given back, that's no longer an optional, could possibly be. That is a teacher in service day. This one, March 26th, is a teacher in service day. And those last 2 days of post-planning are post-planning days for teachers. So basically, by adopting this calendar, you're giving teachers 5 days back.
That's good.
Questions about the calendar? Okay. All right, the next item, these are the June minutes. Any changes or questions about the June minutes? Okay. The next item, since we do not have a budget yet, if you'll remember, we had this spending resolution that you all had to approve for us to start spending funds in July. Since we will not have a budget in August to start August, then this is the spending resolution for August. And so what I imagine will happen is once you approve this, then probably what I'll have to do is sign your names and put my initials next to your names. But this spending resolution is identical to the one that you all signed for July, except the dates have changed. And it's on different letterhead. It's on the correct letterhead. The next item is the class size resolution. Years ago, before we became a charter system, the state required that we send the Board of Education approve a class size resolution, which basically outlines our maximum class sizes for all of these QBE categories, funding categories. And so for years and years, the board would approve it, then I would send it to the state. And once we became a charter system, the state still requires that the board approve a class size resolution at the beginning of each year, but it doesn't go to the state. But if we're ever asked for a copy of our class size resolution, then we have it, and we have the board minutes where the board approved the class size resolution. And I don't believe, if the principals are still on the line, they could help me with this, but I don't believe we made any changes to this year that I'm aware of. I think these are all pretty much the same as we've had them. No real differences. And actually, depending on the number of people who choose the online learning option, our class sizes will probably be smaller than larger this year. The next item, Elaine Gunner, our special ed director, had sent me this information, and she just asked for the board to approve surplusing this equipment that is used with special ed. She just made a notation that these items no longer work and they're not able to be repaired. So she is surplusing those audiology equipment. And the next item, the state requires each year that there's certain documents that have to be submitted for the board. And so every year, at the end of the year, we have to submit an annual training report showing that the board received their required hours for the previous year, for the 1920 school year. And we have to show a board training plan for the current upcoming year, 2021. And we have to show that the Board of Education signed and approved the compliance form for 2021. And we'll take a look at that. The compliance form basically says that the Board of Education has read and understands Board Policy BH, which is Board Code of Ethics, and Board Policy BHA, which is Board Member Conflict of Interest. And so when you look at the FY20 plan, this is what we were required to do. And so this is actually due to the state in October, but each year we normally approve that at this meeting. So I just left it on the agenda for us to approve it. But what I'll do is I will, if you approve it this month, then when we all get together in August, I will have this for the board members to sign at that time, because we still have plenty of time to meet the state's deadline to send in the paperwork. And this, what I do is this is the only form that the state requires, but I have added just a summary sheet for the state to show them actually what we did to earn those hours. Now, Kyle, one thing on yours, because I never could get an actual answer from anyone at GSBA about the required local time, since you had already been a board member for a number of years. And so they had just said to talk with you and see if you felt like you need the additional finance piece, we can make that happen. But I told them I will check with you on that, because we still have time to make that happen in 2020, as long as we get it done. And then
by December, by the end of December.
Yes, and then I believe we're in compliance with everything else. The next one is the board training plan for 2020, 2021. And so with this one, it's very generic, because I called GSBA because normally by this time they would have posted their, what they call Board U, and that lists all of the conferences and meetings and pre-meetings and trainings that they're going to have before the conferences. But they're not actually going to work for in-person work. They're teleworking, I guess. And so Martha White has been my contact there for years. And so I talked to Martha, and she said, Joy, that documentation is not ready yet. So as soon as they develop that and send it out, I can share it with you. But what I put together is that we will just use GSBA FY21 board development, and something within there, we will get our required 6 hours, because I don't even think they can tell us yet what conferences or meetings they're going to have face-to-face and what's going to be virtual. My understanding is with most of the things that we do like that, everything is virtual through January of 2021. But I don't know that GSBA is going to do the same thing. One thing for you all to be thinking about for your 6 hours of training and even the 3 hours of whole board training, because we traditionally do that in February of each year on a Saturday. I've just put that as February. If that's not set in stone, if there's another time that you all prefer to do that, I can change that. And this is just our tentative plan. And then if this changes, when I do the annual report at the end of the year, I just have the annual report as actually what happened. But what I was going to say is if you all can just be thinking about topics that you may want to receive training on, that would be helpful. And then the compliance form. This is just the compliance form that we do. And when we're audited every year by the state, they ask for a copy of this. So we have it in our financial records to show that all of our members, I have read and I'm in compliance with the Commerce City Board of Education Code of Ethics policy and the Board of Education Conflict of Interest policy. I agree to annually disclose compliance with the State Board of Education's policy on training. I agree to provide notice to the Secretary of the local Board of Ed and the election superintendent within 10 days of a move. If I qualify to run for the Commerce City Board of Education in the future, I will file the affidavit required by 20-2-51 affirming that I meet all the qualifications. And so I just have to have this signed and on file with everybody. And this is another one of those documents at the August board meeting that I'll have everybody sign when we're back together. And just in case you're thinking, you know, I need to look at those policies, so you don't have to look it up, I just attached those 2 policies there, so you have copies of those. The final item of business is the GSBA risk management services. This year, we've switched over from Solomon Deaton, which we've used for years and years and years, but the premium just continued to increase. And so we actually quoted that out to several other people, vendors, and GSBA came back with a pretty substantial savings for the system. And we're actually getting more coverage because Toby has asked us for years to have the cybersecurity piece. I'm sure you've all read in the paper what happened to Jackson County government when, you know, they were kind of at a situation where they had someone say, you know, you have to pay us or we're going to do thus and so to your system. And so that would cover us in the event we had a situation like that. So GSBA just requires that we have it in our board minutes that all of our board members are aware that during the 2021 school year, Commerce City Schools will use GSBA for risk management services, which will include workman's compensation, general liability, school board liability, auto liability, property coverage, mechanical, crime, and cybersecurity. So it's basically the same package we had with Solomon Deaton, but this year we're going with GSBA. And strictly for the financial savings that we got from doing that. Okay, any questions about any of the business items? Okay, then we are ready for consent agenda. And remember, on the draft budget, we're not approving the budget. It's only, you're only approving to table that budget for 30 days.
Does anyone want to make a motion for the consent agenda?
Make a motion that we approve the consent agenda A through J.
Okay.
I'll second.
I made the motion and Cal seconded it. I made a motion that we approve A through J on the consent business and Cal seconded it.
Oh, okay. So it says seconded. Okay. Okay, then everybody in favor would say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. And it passes.
Okay, thank you.
All
All right, under superintendent's report, school financials, we're still closing out the year. So we had 2 elementary financial reports that we had not received yet from Pam. And so she has sent those to us. So those are there for you all to take a look at. ELOS report. In June of 2020, June 1st, we brought forward a balance of $2,668,597.21. We had a small deposit on June the 16th of $128.53. Another deposit at the end of June, June 29th of $159,605.10. We had a small reinvestment of interest of $552.17 for an ending balance on June 30th of $2,828,883.01. So the next payment that will come out of that will be an outstanding principal and interest payment that's due at the beginning of August. Okay, now we are ready to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing personnel. And so when we go into executive session, I will go off of YouTube and we will stay in the Zoom meeting, but it will not be open to the public.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Second,
Second the motion.
okay. Now the principals, they'll get to go now, I guess, Joy.
Yes, sir. If any of them are
Okay.
still here, they will leave.
Okay.
And so let me press stop share.
Dr. Talbert, while you're doing
Uh-huh.
that, if I can mention something, Mr. Smith and I were just talking about it.
No, my phone's good.
And so,
Yeah. No, mine's good. Okay.
no, man.
I'm sorry.
So we got a directive today that open house with 50 can't